Welcome everyone. So glad to have you participate in our webinar today. Let me just provide you with a brief agenda. So went through introductions. We'll be highlighting some SPM solution overviews. I'm assuming most of you might know about those capabilities, but I'm using that to kind of show some of the organizational change material that we provide for customers as part of migration or just part of standard implementations. So we'll kind of do some brief solution overviews. Then from there, we'll look at the guided setup migration best practices. And these are really kind of the accelerated implementation approaches for the different workspaces. We'll also discuss the various dependencies associated with these. We'll also kind of highlight high-level timelines associated with these migrations as well. So thanks again for joining us here for our webinar today. Those of you that aren't familiar with ResultsPositive, we've been assisting organizations over 20 years, helping them get the value out of their technology investments, and specifically around strategic portfolio management, project portfolio management, analytics and reporting, and service management. So these have been the pillars, the core practice areas that we provide services. And we really focus on helping organizations implement right-sized solutions that can actually be adopted, as well as drive overall business outcomes. So thanks again for joining us today. And we're so appreciative of our strategic partner, ServiceNow. First of all, just kind of highlight our kind of view of a SPM solution overview. We definitely use this in some of our communication materials as part of organizational change. Great way to identify and provide an overview of the solution components. So we'll create a map like this as appropriate for different migration projects or implementation projects. So kind of the standard flow here, you got intake via the demand, going into the overall pipeline, estimating and scoring. From there, going into actually kind of using the strategic planning to align your goals and objectives, identify where these particular new items would fit on your roadmap. Then check and confirm that we've got capacity to actually execute, and then from there get approval, create the project, and then do project execution, and obviously project execution using the project workspace. And then down at the bottom we have resource and time management. A key component that we always see as a key success factor are reporting, and so that's another area that we focus in. So next here, just to provide brief overview. Like I said, many of you might already know about these capabilities, but I thought I'd provide a brief overview since we're talking about these workspaces today and how you can migrate to them or get them set up for your organization. So with the strategic planning workspace, i.e. also the portfolio planning workspace, strategic planning workspace is for customers that have the SPM Pro license. Portfolio planning workspaces for customers that have the standard license. So I'm going to kind of focus here on the Pro side, but basically the core capabilities are the same. You wouldn't have the goals item here as an example for standard. But the core thing that you're looking at here is being able to look at all of the demands and projects. You'd be able to rank those here. You'd be able to group them together, as you can see here from a portfolio perspective or any other dimension. So you can start to kind of get a view as you're managing that backlog. And then you can obviously identify various prioritization and alignment to primary goals or to Moscow ratings. So you can use that here in the strategic planning workspace. There is the new scenario planning, but in the future releases, that'll be ready to go to focus on analyzing scenarios, including the impacts to resources and financials. Currently, right now, you can use scenario planning to align to your different strategic goals. One of the key benefits we see here with strategic planning is the ability to put together your overall roadmap. So we're finding more organizations, both from a EPMO, PMO perspective, putting together their overall roadmap, right, which would include various updates or functionality they want to roll out from a ServiceNow perspective, as an example. as well as other parts of the organization. And so that can be done up front as part of annual planning. That can be an ongoing function that we see organizations doing today. And then one of the key benefits here is being able to look at the dependencies. So you can actually have dependencies across the items. I don't show that here on this particular screenshot, but if you have dependencies, you would see the lines between the associated items. And if there is a gap or collision there, then you would see that that line turn to red. So it's a great way to look at your overall roadmap. There's other capabilities here around capacity planning, which we'll highlight coming up. But the core capabilities around the prioritization and the road mapping, and then the financial resource management is also part of the strategic planning workspace. And next, we look at it from project management perspective. So here we're kind of highlighting the new project workspace. Hold on a second. Let me need to give you another example of that. So here's an example of the project workspace. And so it's got a new modern interface here for managing your actual project schedule. There's a lot more capabilities here for copy and paste, single lines, multiple lines, a lot of additional capabilities that organizations have been looking for there. You can also export that out to Microsoft Project. You can export it out to Excel. What's also nice too now is you could actually import your project from Microsoft Project. The PM can make updates in Microsoft Project, then re-import it in again. So that's also supported. So some good new capabilities here around the project planning. So that's a key reason that organizations migrating to the project workspace. Other benefits here on the RIDAC page, you got one page to manage all those items, supports the overall workflow process from risk to issue to decision, etc. So a great way to simplify that process. Also, there's a new docs capability. And so that capability gives you the ability to have online quote unquote documents with HTML fields to be able to track meetings, or you can even create templates. So you could create templates, say, for a project charter as an example. So a lot of different options there from a docs perspective. They have a new status report in the docs framework. So that's something that's also available. So that's definitely an area that we guide customers based on requirements. What's the best way to do their status reporting? And then the key focus that we're going to talk about today is the resource management. And so the new project workspace supports the new resource management capabilities. So that's one thing we'll talk about today. Key dependency is if you want to move to the new resource management, it's best that you make sure that you implement the project workspace at the same time or prior to migrating to the new resource management capabilities. So that's one of the key components we wanted to highlight there from a project perspective. Additionally, from a status report perspective, like we said, you can definitely use docs for that. You can do templates for that. You can take that and then save that out as a PDF as an example. I understand that there might be further solutions that ServiceNow will be providing around status report. What you're seeing here is one of our out-of-the-box status reports. So this is set up and can be used in the new project workspace. So here's just an example of an overall one-pager here from an overall status report perspective. You can obviously save this to PDF. You can export this to a PowerPoint as well. Here's kind of looking at a two-page example. So one page here giving more information here on some of the key dates and some financials. Then on the page two, looking at resource information and key milestones, coupled with the overall timeline. So these are available. And so, or like we said, you could use the out-of-the-box project docs solution. Next here, wanted to kind of look at things from an overall new resource management capability. And so if we look at it in terms of three major functions that are part of the new resource management. First one here is the capacity planning. So this is actually part of the strategic planning workspace that I mentioned earlier. And so this is a very valuable tool so that you can then look at, based on your roadmap, can we actually deliver, do we have the resources to deliver on our roadmap? And so this way you can kind of look at it by group or by role or even by skill, and gives you the heat map here and let you know whether or not you'll be able to meet the demands and resource estimates associated with your roadmap. It'll also show you, as you drill into this, it'll let you know that you might have other resource demands outside of this portfolio plan. And so it gives you that visibility, which is key as you're making decisions to basically approve and green light one of the projects. So you've got that type of visibility as well. And then down below here, you can actually see the planning items associated with that roadmap, and you'll be able to see where they are in the overall timeline associated with the overall capacity heat map up above. You can actually move these bars back and forth, and it'll update the underlying resources assignments. So you could definitely do that. If you do it on projects and you have a lot of information, I would typically recommend not doing that. You can, it's just going to take a long time for the system to go and make all those updates. It's basically going to update all of the resource assignment dates. But when it does that, then it's going to update the view up here. And so you might move from having 3 months here of under capacity, and then might turn green there as you move that particular one out further in the year. So great capability here, but it requires, it's in the strategic planning workspace, but it requires turning on and using the new resource management capabilities. Next here, we kind of highlighted this for resource management. Here we've got it in the project space. And so what's nice here with the new resource management allows for different type of planning modes, if you will, or assignment modes, if you will. So you could leave it open. And so then a project manager could do the actual assignments, i.e. allocations. So you could do that. Or if you want it to be more controlled, if you've been doing legacy resource management, then you could basically only allow resource managers to actually do the allocations. Here in the project workspace, they obviously have the resource management workspace, which I'll highlight next, where they can do that function. But you could limit and prevent project managers from doing that allocation if that's the method that you choose, and then that would have to be configured at this point. In upcoming releases, that'll be an option. Next here we have the resource management workspace. And so this really gives an opportunity for resource managers or even portfolio managers to come in and create their overall board or card. And they can set whatever type of filters they want to see there. And so then from there, in this case, we're looking at a group, and they would see all of their individual team members. And you see the overall heat map for each team member. Then you'd be able to see what they're actually allocated to. That could be projects. You can see here projects can be epics here. It could be demands. It could also be your operational resource assignments. And so that's the new operational resource plan entity and the new resource management capabilities. So good capability here. You can also toggle this on to see if you want to see any of your unassigned tasks. They're really unassigned resource assignments. And from there, as a resource manager, you can then allocate resources to those resource assignments. And so that's how you would go through that formal resource allocation process. So good capability here with the resource management workspace. So this gives you some of those options to reassign resources. If you've got someone currently assigned, you can look at reassigning and basically almost kind of like doing the split resource assignments. So some of those other capabilities that you had in the resource allocation workbench are being included here in the resource management workspace. And next here, we always like to highlight analytics. And so we know that definitely varies based on organization, but we typically see 3 levels of analytics and reporting, kind of stakeholder reports, the overall PMO dashboard type reports there, and then daily operations type reports. So down with daily operations, as a project manager, right, they would use their project analytics within their individual project, their project plans. So that's typically what they would use. Individual team members, a lot of times we'll set up a team member dashboard. Some organizations are having them use the service operation workspace, or for other organizations, we're creating a separate workspace for all the project team members. So different options available there. And then obviously your timesheets, if you're doing timesheets, you'd use the timesheet portal. You can kind of get visibility there, as well as then seeing that roll up into the project analytics as an example. And then there's the out-of-the-box PMO dashboard. So that's now also available in the platform analytics. Same capabilities there. Obviously, that's an opportunity, if needed, to look at making some configuration updates or adding in some new KPIs and indicators. So that's a great way to monitor and track the quality of the data, overall delivery performance. There's some really good key out-of-the-box indicators, such as on time, on budget type of indicators. And what's nice with that is you can roll it up to a portfolio level. You could roll it down to a program level as an example. So it's a great way to get visibility and performance across projects, across multiple portfolios, or even into departments. And then we have stakeholder reports. So those could be just regular dashboards. Most all of our organizations use our enterprise project portfolio portal. It's a great way to share with all your external stakeholders, and that further gives access to the business cases and status reports. So here's an example of that enterprise project portfolio. And so this can be shared with all stakeholders. This doesn't require ServiceNow license here. We are in the process of getting this on the ServiceNow store, so that's coming shortly. Also, we have a new version of this. So basically, all the major changes that organizations like to make here can actually be done without coding. So that can be done just via property settings. So the different, select what widgets you want, how do you want to name those, select which details sections you want, what are the columns you want for data. So a lot of the stuff can be easily done without any coding. So good new enhancement there to our overall enterprise report portal. Here's an example then. When you're on that portal, you can click on it. From there, you would take you into the status report. So we can see here, looking at an overall status report, similar to what we were showing before. The PMO dashboard, this isn't the best example because I don't have a lot of good data in this example, but this is a really good solution here, especially with the roll-up, roll-down capabilities, even here from a business unit perspective. Then it also includes the performance analytics trending metrics over time. So you can track your financials over time, or your project delivery metrics over time. You can even look at your standard deviation in terms of overall delivery performance. And then here's an example of a team member dashboard so that can be set up so they can kind of look at all of their work here in one place, as well as I can look at their group's work. Here again, we're doing a lot of new workspaces for organizations to create an own workspace, or some organizations are using the service operations workspace and including the project information in there. So a lot of different options for you, depending upon what kind of standard and what type of user experience you're setting up for your organization. So that's what I want to review in terms of the overall solutions. What I wanted to talk about next here is kind of the guided setup and migration approaches, and then provide you some example best practices that we include as we go through these accelerated implementation approaches. So first of all, it's always important to confirm what the goals and objectives are. And so that's a key component when we're starting out, whether it be a regular project or whether it be one of our guided migration projects. And so basically, what are the goals and objectives? So for example, if you're looking to migrate to the new strategic planning workspace, your goal might be to enhance strategic planning and roadmap processes. You might then submit a demand and get approved a strategic planning initiative. And ultimately, you want to optimize your investments in the right projects based on scoring and ranking. So, and your overall roadmap. So that might be a set of goals and objectives. Obviously, that's an example that would lead to strategic planning workspace. Or you might be looking to enhance your core project portfolio management tools, looking at any type of automation. So from that perspective, you might have an initiative to modernize and streamline your project management activities. And as a result, right, looking to deliver better performance via on time and on budget. And so you could be able to do that with the new resource management, the new project workspace. Then next here we have looking at goals from a resource management perspective. So one of your goals might be to optimize resource utilization, specifically around your strategic investments. And from there, to be able to do that, you might have an overall initiative here to focus on resource planning, estimates, and capacity management. And then, so that would translate into implementing the new resource management capabilities. And so here we're trying to accomplish increased project resource utilization. So we want to increase that on our projects, or driving more value to the organization versus supporting the organization. So that's kind of the first thing, identifying the right goals that would drive the determination of, do we just implement one specific workspace? Do we implement a combination thereof? And so that's one thing we look at. The next thing we'd like to kind of guide the customers on, letting them know the critical dependencies. And so that's a key component. So say, for example, resource management being the primary goal and objective. And so in that case, we would highlight that the key there for that dependency-wise would be strategic planning workspace for that capacity planning capability. So you can look at that heat map. What's it going to require to deliver on your strategic plans and your strategic roadmaps? And do we have enough capacity? So if you wanted to do the full resource management, then you want to make sure that strategic planning is available, and as well as that you have access to the capacity planning. To do the full end-to-end life cycle for resource management, you'll definitely want to be using the new project workspace for resource assignments. So that will be a key component there as well. And then it goes without saying that you would use the resource management workspace. So that's one of the key components here for new resource management. There's other things that you'll do as part of the process. ServiceNow has a good set of scripts to migrate, say, existing resource plans to resource assignments, as well as the setting up of your employee profiles. So the big dependency there is making sure that if you haven't been using resource management, that you identify all of your groups and roles, identify what approach you want to follow for resource management, whether it be group-based or role-based, as well as then you need to make sure that you set the primary resource group or primary resource role on your different users in the system, and that needs to be set up in the employee profiles. So that's a key dependency and requirement there. So next, if your overall goal and objective is for strategic planning, so here you could definitely do strategic planning. Say if resource capacity isn't a necessity, then you could skip over that, and you could actually could hide that, be a configuration setting there. But for the full capabilities here, you'd want to use the new resource management. So you'd want, if you roll it out and you want to have that capacity planning, well, you want to make sure that resource management's implemented as well. There is a strategic planning integration layer. So strategic planning has planning items. So they have a different record for demands, for projects, for epics. So you want to make sure that that integration gets set up, and then it is multi-directional or whichever fits your business requirements. But that's what would guide organizations. Typically, you want to have that in sync. And then there's recently just new updates around financials and budgets. So those are things to keep in mind that you'll need to kind of migrate into those new capabilities. Basically, they're very similar to the way you're doing it today, but there are some simplification there as well. Then if we're looking at things on the project side of things, right, we could just come in here and make sure that we're implementing the project workspace, and that could ignore the resource side of things. But if you're looking at doing the resource management, obviously you would need to set that up and include that. But if we're just looking at the project workspace, we're not concerned about resource management, then just need to be cognizant of the new project financials, the steps to be set up to be using the new budgets, need to understand the new updated status reporting. We have project docs that we talked about. And so you need to determine if you want to use that, you're going to use the legacy, or if you wanted to use some of our SaaS report capabilities, and that's built into the new project workspace. A minor thing here is just that I think this is part of the Xanadu release, the carryover of data from demands to project. That's been updated with a new utility, so you might have to do some updates there to make sure that migration works. And obviously that's not really required until you're in Xanadu or later. So that's a high-level summary of the critical dependencies. As you can see here, if you're looking to do resource management, you really need to implement all three of the different workspaces. And so that's something to keep in mind. But we have implemented each one of the strategic planning workspace, project workspace, independent of resource management. So that can be done. We can guide you the best way to do that. And that can be controlled by various settings and configuration so that the end user is not burdened by the resource management information. So we definitely can set that up to support those specific goals and objectives. So next here, when we look at from this accelerated guided implementation around strategic planning, you'll see most of the guided implementation, a lot of it is really around education and discussing best practices. And then we also then provide our recommended configurations and review that with a customer. So we don't have to go to the lengthy, design activities for these guided implementations. And so we can do those rather quickly here. So basically we start off with the education and then guide the team on the best practice of usage of those capabilities. And then from there, we'll review the setup requirements and key decisions that they need to make. We'll provide our recommendations with that as well. We'll definitely provide our recommended best practice configurations. So you'll have that available to you. For organizations just want the advisory and education services, right? We would provide that, and then your internal team would do the configuration. So that's an option for you. Then from there, we set up the capabilities, and then we kind of move into pilot or pre-pilot. We kind of call it pre-pilot training here because we're doing that accelerated approach. This pre-pilot evaluation is basically like UAT, but it's really an opportunity for the team to kind of use it a little bit, see how it works in your non-prod environment, and then from there you can move it to production. Now, what's really nice with this is there are specific roles set up for strategic planning, so you could release this to production in stealth mode. So you could release it, say no one has access to it. Typically you wouldn't do that, but we have done that for a couple organizations just because they want to get it out there and make sure it's compliant with all the different versions. The other way you would typically see is you would release it just to a small group, whoever's going to be your pilot audience to start using for strategic planning. Now we've seen strategic planning be used not just for the traditional PMO or EPMO, but it could be on the business side. It could be a strategic planning office for the organization, or it could be for IT PMO as an example. So you can kind of release it to that pilot group. No one else will be able to get access to that capability since it's controlled by the roles and the access rights. So a great way to implement that and then roll it out to other groups over time. So that's looking at the strategic planning workspace if you're to do that just individually. Next here is the new project workspace. So if we were to implement the new project workspace in this guided accelerated approach, so here you're going to go through basically the same process. You're going to educate, let the team understand what the core capabilities are. We're going to then review and confirm the requirements and key decisions that need to be made. We're going to then present our best practice configuration recommendations, and we'll then set that up if that's part of the project. If not, we would guide and oversee the internal team. Then obviously the project workspace will be set up, and then we'll get ready for the pilot activities. So similar activities here from a project manager perspective when it comes to rollout of the new workspace. Say you've been using the classic project workspace, you want to move to the new. We've had many organizations be very successful doing, a larger organizational change initiative than what we're showing here. But as a part of that, we provide with the training. So like a 2-hour training, train the trainer for project managers. Typically what we recommend there would be one session would be a demo walkthrough. The next one would be a hands-on. And so after that, they're good to go to start using the new project workspace. The good news is that based on the current release timeline, the project manager could choose to start using the new project workspace versus the classic, and they could toggle between the two. We have been able to turn off certain capabilities now. So if you're not going to use the project docs status report, right, those can be hidden as an example. If you're not using RIDAC, that could be hidden as well. So there's some other things that we typically recommend based upon the core capabilities and standard methods and processes for the organization. So that's looking at it from a new project workspace perspective. Here we're looking at it from a resource management perspective. And so this is kind of assuming that you already have strategic planning workspace included and up and running. You already have the new project workspace working. And so this scenario is just doing the new resource management. So what we found with resource management, it just requires more time for education, requires more time for reviewing and confirming decisions for the setup, as well as any of the recommended best practice configurations. You can see here there's not a lot of configurations around resource management. At least we don't recommend a lot. So keep that in mind. But it's really spending the time to have the organization, the pros and cons of the different resource management approaches, from a group-based versus role-based being really key there, as well as then just educating them on the new features and functions of resource management, specifically for customers that have been using the legacy resource management. So that's really where we're spending the time here in the education and the workshops up front, reviewing the solution, educating the team on the solution is really key. And then doing the similar type of training that I described for project management with resource managers. So that's key there. Sometimes we even do more training for resource management. So that's definitely the area where more training is needed, and found that to be most successful. The next one here is looking at if you were to do all three of the workspaces. And like I said, this is an accelerated path here. So typically it'd be 10 to 12 week for a standard project. For accelerated, right, we do less configuration and just less overall assistance, but that seems to meet some organizations from an overall budget perspective. But we would typically lead with our best practice recommendation. Then if they're looking for an accelerated, we would provide kind of the accelerated migration approach. So similar type of approach here. that you saw on the others, but here we're doing those 3 workspaces all combined. And so just a similar overall process. Next, what I wanted to highlight is just some of the best practice materials that we share. It's not everything that we share, it's just some of the things that we share. And I've got some here on around resource management, just so you can get an idea. So here, when we look at resource management, in our over 20 years helping customers implement resource management, we definitely have found a lot of critical key success factors. And so we always like to share that with the team. For success for resource management isn't necessarily the tool. It can be any tool that you're using for resource management. Really, the gap comes down into the organizational adoption and usage. So these 3 areas we found are really key. Commitment. So what we mean by commitment is need to make sure that the key players and roles participating in resource management have the time that they need to estimate and plan and allocate resources. Also need to make sure that when you implement resource management, that doesn't remove the need to communicate. So project managers and resource managers, really important that they continue to communicate. If they're doing that very well without a tool, then it makes a nice transition. The tool can help enhance things, but you still need to make sure that communication occurs. And so the key here is making sure that resource managers have the capacity to do their activities. And I'll highlight an opportunity if that's not the case. So from a communication perspective, it's really key. It's really all about communication, right? Project managers need resource to work on their projects. They need to communicate. They need to know what resource managers' decisions have been made. And so that dialogue back and forth, understanding those commitments that have been made, documenting those commitments in the system, and continually being up to date on the communication, because we all know just because a resource gets assigned doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be able to work on the project for the full duration. Yes, we want them to, but that's the importance of communication. Governance is really key. So what we found for implementing resource management, key to success, is really we shouldn't be approving projects if we don't have the available resources. And so that's going to, might let less projects through the pipeline. But what we found, that's going to accelerate the actual delivery of projects because you don't have as many that have actually been approved in the pipeline. So your resources are more focused. So that's really key there, is making sure that you have a governance entity, that they approve the overall demands into projects based on using that capacity planning capability that we showed in the strategic planning workspace. Last but not least is organizational change management. That's really key here. A lot of education, a lot of communication is key. The one thing that we have found over time to improve your overall resource management success, and this is typically if you have issues with resource managers not having enough bandwidth to support the resource management activities, is establishing 1 or 2 or 3 resource management specialists that are there to support the project managers, the resource managers, to validate that resource assignments and allocations are up to date, and manage and monitor that dynamic changing process. So that's a key thing to think about as you are implementing resource management. Next, we like to kind of highlight, from that communication organizational change perspective, it's all about setting expectations. A lot of times with resource management, everyone feels like it has to be perfect. And so that is not the case, because if we strive for perfection, we're going to spend way too much time managing and maintaining our resource assignments, i.e. our estimates and allocations, versus actually doing the work. So you need to kind of identify here at the bottom, what's the level of accuracy you're looking for, right? So typically see long-term, you probably want it to be 80, 90%. You just need to be good enough so you can make best informed decisions. But if you're trying to get that 100% accurate, if you will, you're going to spend a lot of time and you're going to get all the value. Obviously, over time, you can increase that percentage, but the that's important, especially when you start out. Next here up front, we kind of talked about it. Projects should be approved based on resource availability. Highlighting the expectations that you're going to have fewer active projects now because we're focusing on resource management, but we're going to focus on the right projects that have been approved based on alignment to strategic objectives and our resource availability. Resource managers, they'll need to review and allocate resources as well as operational resource assignments. If they don't have the capacity to do that, that's where that centralized group can help out. Project managers, right, they must keep the resource assignment estimates up to date. And so that's going to be key for them. Obviously, those are provided to them once the project is approved from a demand. But as we all know, there are scope changes throughout a project. So as part of that process, the project managers will need to work with the right resources to estimate those additional resource needs or reduce the resource needs. So it's important to spend the time to do that. And then we kind of provide here kind of a view, and this can be updated based on customer, but what are the major activities that need to be performed? What's the role that would need to perform those? And then what's the frequency? So you can kind of see here is it weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, annual. And so what you'll see here is kind of at a minimum, you want to do all of the ones here with the big bold X. Here we've kind of got the gray ones be kind of more optional. So it's a good way to set the stage, set the expectations so that you're going to be set up for success for resource management. So like I said, just an example of some of our best practices, advisory and guided setup that we recommend. So that's an example of some of the things that we'll review as part of those migration activities. So the next thing question is how to migrate to the new workspaces. So the first thing you could do is schedule your SPM migration discovery session with us. We can kind of review where you're at. From there, we can just do a simple recommendation for an accelerated migration approach, or maybe a full approach, or we could actually then do a specific assessment and roadmap for you. So schedule your session. We can do a couple of sessions. We actually have the ability to do a free assessment and roadmap here just with a couple of sessions. So if that's something you want to tap into, or it can just be a scoping call to put together to give you a proposal for one of our guided accelerated migrations or a full implementation. All right. Thanks again for everyone for participating today. Like I said, feel free to reach out. I'd love to have a discovery call and see how we can help you with your migration or just give you some advice.